Disney Pictures, a well-known motion picture production company, which is part of the Walt Disney Studios, was founded by Walt Disney, also known as Walter Disney, an American entrepreneur, film producer, showman, animation creator, and much more. His creation of Disney overall has had a huge impact on the entertainment industry as a whole, and is now known to be an extremely large and ever-growing company. Walt Disney Pictures began as a small company, which was producing short cartoons which were curated for children, and it has grown to be one of the most iconic companies known to man. In fact, Walt Disney himself was the creator of many of the famous characters we love and know today, such as Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. Walt Disney Pictures has created some of the most iconic movies and cartoons to date. Some of the most popular include The Lion King, a story about a young lion cub and his father Mufasa. It conveys a message regarding friendship, love, and honesty. Pocahontas, a story about romance between an American Indian woman and a man. Her father disapproves of their relationship, leading to many problems. Peter Pan, a story about a boy who did not want to grow up and instead wanted to live in the magic of being a child forever. Mickey Mouse, this Disney character and show symbolizes happiness, silliness, dreams, hopes, and excitement. And lastly, Sleeping Beauty. This is a fairy tale about a princess who is faced with a curse that causes her to fall into a deep sleep and eventually be awakened. Although these Disney stories seem fun-hearted, loving, and full of life lessons, this is not how they were once portrayed. In fact, some of these films' true storylines may come as a shock, as they portray the exact opposite story of what Disney has molded them into. Many of them portray violence, evil, harmful, and sad messages, with almost no happy ending. Here are 5 Disney movies that were once not very family friendly and in fact wouldn't have been appropriate for any child to watch. Number 1. Pinocchio. This film was released in 1940. This movie was extremely popular and it won 2 Academy Awards. This Disney movie is about a woodworker who creates a puppet he calls Pinocchio. He wishes he could become a real boy, and lo and behold, overnight, a fairy grants him his big wish, and poof, he becomes a real boy. Of course, there were a few things the puppet had to prove, such as his bravery, truthfulness, and that he was not selfish. This story follows him as he strives to live up to the qualities that a real boy should have. Little do many people know is that this was not the full true story. In fact, the true story is much more gruesome. The reality of the story is that it was created on the basis of teaching and showing children all of the possible consequences of being bad. Pinocchio was portrayed as a bad young boy who eventually killed himself. Throughout the story, he's tortured in many different ways as punishment for his many wrongdoings. The story almost ends when Pinocchio hangs himself, but ends up continuing when his life is spared in return for continued physical punishments. Number 2. Sleeping Beauty. This film was released in 1959. Sleeping Beauty is one of the 12 Disney princesses, and her story is quite interesting. A princess is born and is proclaimed to grow gracefully and with tons of beauty, but lo and behold, right before her 16th birthday, she pricks her finger and dies. Except a character in the story named Merryweather was able to cast her own spell to save the princess from dying, and instead fall into a deep slumber, only to be awakened by true love's kiss. Although that story sounds like it had a somewhat happy ending, again, that is only how it was portrayed by Disney, but in fact it had a much more gruesome outcome. The true love kiss did not wake her up, and eventually the king who gave her the kiss rapes her while she is still asleep. As 9 months passes by, she eventually gives birth to 2 twins, one of which sucks the splinter out of her finger and wakes her up. After this, the king and princess fall in love while the king is still married. The king's queen orders the twin babies to be kidnapped, cooked alive, and then fed to the king. Number 3. Snow White. This film was released in 1938. This film idea was considered to be brought to the big screen by Walt Disney when he was only 15 years old. The story is about a wicked queen who wants her stepdaughter killed, but then realizes that Snow White is in fact still alive and hiding from her in a cottage with 7 friendly dwarfs. Now, let's touch on the origin of the Snow White story. In fact, this is one of the most gruesome stories yet. Snow White's stepmother wants to have her killed in order to eat her. She wanted to eat her liver and lungs with both salt and pepper. Although they are able to trick her and give her the liver and lungs of a boar, this is still a very chilling story. Eventually, Snow White seeks revenge, and her stepmother is killed by being forced to wear red-hot iron shoes and walk in these shoes until she dies from exhaustion and burns. Number 4. Cinderella. Released by Disney in 1997, this story is about a girl who is living with her mother and father until her mother passes away. When her father remarried, she has to face the new wife and her 2 evil stepdaughters. Furthermore, Cinderella's father dies, and her new stepmom turns Cinderella into her servant around the house. In the original story, you hear about the stepsisters chopping off sections of their feet to fit into a glass slipper, bloody and all. In addition to this, the stepsisters also get their eyes pecked out by little birds that usually accompany Cinderella. Number 5. Pocahontas. This movie was released by Disney in 1995. It is about a young Native American girl who falls in love with an English colonist. Her father does not take this lightly and then plans to execute him. Furthermore, Pocahontas saves him from death and ends the ongoing feud between Native Americans and colonists. In the darker story of Pocahontas, she was only 10 years old, while the man she was in love with was in his mid-30s. They never had a romantic relationship. In fact, she was kidnapped and forced to marry the Englishman and fully change her name. In fact, she also dies in this version of the story, but from unknown causes. Although these stories may be scary and even gruesome to hear about, we can't let the magic be taken away from the Disney stories, as these are many stories that we keep close to our hearts, whether we were kids when we first heard them or adults.